All right, so Mark, let's talk a little bit about the listing you have on 6116 Perch Drive. Give everybody a general location where that property's at.
Well, this is just outside of Loop 820 on the west side of town. It's Eagle Mountain Lake is a few miles to the northwest of it, and then Lake Worth is a few miles to the southwest of the house. So if you want to go to the lake or you need to go get something to eat down in Lake Worth, then it's just a few miles down the road. It's kind of the northwest side of the Fort Worth.
Tell me a little bit about Eagle Mountain Lake.
Well, Eagle Mountain is on the Trinity River. It's a fairly large lake, been there since 1930, and quite a bit of lake access, restaurants on the lake. There's a lot of people ski and sail on it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, every time I go out there, there's a lot of boating, people fishing. Is that what you want to go fishing, Nui?
Fishing, I'm not sure. But
What?
jet ski, kayaking.
Oh, there's all of that.
Jet ski and kayaking. What about catching a big bass? You ever been largemouth bass
I would like
fishing?
to try.
Oh, Mark, well, you got a new assignment. Take this girl fishing.
All righty, I'll get the kayaks out.
Okay.
You're going to train her to bait her own hook with a big old earthworm.
I bet she could do that.
That's what you got to do to catch fish. Just a big old tag on it. You got to put
Live
them on.
one?
Yeah, live one. You got to put it on the hook and everything.
No.
Then when you get the fish, you got to get him off the hook.
So let's get the agenda straight. She's going to go fishing first, and then she gets to ride on the jet ski.
Oh my God.
There we go.
That's a
So-
condition though.
So out there on Eagle Mountain Lake, I mean, yeah, I've been to some of them restaurants out there. Got some good restaurants out there.
Yeah.
Thai restaurants?
And right up Boat Club Road, there's also Eagle Mountain Park, where you can go hiking. There's miles of trails out there, and overlooks the lake. Beautiful.
What about how close is it into Fort Worth?
Well, it's just from downtown Fort Worth, you're looking about 20 minutes.
Nice.
It's not far to downtown Fort Worth, and probably 15 minutes from the stockyards. Go down to Cooper's Barbecue, about 15 minutes away.
Cooper's Barbecue, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's supposed to be lunchtime up in this joker right here. If Cooper's Barbecue was 5 minutes closer, we'd go to Cooper's today. So let's get into, Nui, tell us where we are. We've got this property online right now, so people can come online and bid. Mm-hmm. And so how do you do that is you go to auction listings at MyersJackson.com. Just Google search Myers Jackson auction listings. Look for this particular property at 6116 Perch Drive. That's there in Azle, right? Is it Azle? Or
It's actually Fort Worth.
So it's actually Fort Worth. So Azle is right on the other side of the lake. This is Fort Worth. That's all you got to do is type that in there. Nui, what's our current bid? What's our current bid on this property right here?
So right now it's $329,500.
So $329,500. I tell you what, this is easy as this gets right now. So we have these bid increments set up. Let's talk about the bid increments. The bid increments are set up basically in $500 or $1,000 increments. So what we want to do is, if you're a buyer and you're saying, well, you know what, I don't want to pay, $25,000 more. Well, this is the perfect opportunity. So Mark, all somebody has to do is just put it in another $1,000. So what happens if that light goes green, Mark?
Well, they'll be getting a call from the auctioneer.
I'm going to agree with it. Hey, Nui, grab my big old gavel back there. I want to get my gavel back there. Can you grab my gavel?
Yes.
Looks like here. I'm all tucked in here in this seat up here, and I can't get around here. But okay, so Nui's got this gavel. So here's some components of what we have today. Okay, at any time somebody can get online and bid, and this online bidding is really, really easy. If you're the winning bidder, and the light goes green online, all you have to do is put in the correct number. So that means the reserve has been met. Mm-hmm. So, Mark, in your opinion, so you've been working with me how long now?
Oh, about 5 years now.
So about 5 years. What is your definition of the reserve? When you think about reserve, and when people ask you, hey, what is the reserve? What do you think? What is the reserve?
Well, the reserve is the money that the seller says, this is what it's going to take to make me want to sell my house.
Okay, so what happens if that amount is less than the reserve? What if a bidder comes in and they put a bid in and it's less than the reserve? What have you seen happen?
I've seen the seller break out into a little sweat, wipe their forehead and say, you know what? I want to touch that money. And they tell the auctioneer, sell it.
So I guess the point of this conversation right here is do not be scared of the reserve. I mean, a lot of people go out and say, well, there's a reserve and I'm never going to hit the reserve. I mean, so A, B, or C, with properties that we've sold at auction, have we sold 0 properties? Have we sold a few properties? Or have we sold a lot of properties where the seller's got a reserve? Which one?
We've sold quite a few properties.
Well, wait a minute. If you had to answer A, B, or C, which one would it be?
Charlie.
Huh? Come on with it.
Charlie.
Charlie. Now, you know. So if you ever watched John Boy and Billy, have you ever heard John Boy and Billy? Have you ever watched that show and they had the current events quiz? What was the correct answer on the current events quiz?
Charlie out.
That was always C. You know, I got on the John Boy and Billy show one morning. Did I ever tell you that?
Oh, what happened?
Well, you know what? I was on the John, what you got to do new is you got to call into the radio station. And they had all these games and everything up there. And so when you got on the John Boy and Billy show, they had 2 or 3 people that was answering the phone, and then they have a bunch of different personalities. And this lady named Jackie, she was always the one to answer the phone. And so they always kid about Jackie about answering the phone. I think she was the best looking one out of the bunch. Now, if I don't know, I never did see Jackie, but she had a nice voice. You know how I know? It's because I dialed that number about 10,000 times. I said, I'm going to get on the John Boy and Billy show now. I'm going to get on that joker. And I was riding. I remember where I was. I was in Crossville, Tennessee, and I done dialed the number in. I was rolling down the road in my truck. I done dialed the number in. And she says, hey, this is Jackie with John Boy and Billy. I said, you got to be joking me like right now, Jackie. She says, no, you're on the John Boy and Billy show. I says, I am. She says, yeah, you ready to play the current events quiz? And I says, yeah, I'm ready. She says, well, you know what to do, right? And I said, yeah, I know what to do. So here comes John Boy and Billy, and they get on there. Hey, yeah, how you doing? What are you doing? All this other kind of stuff. I said, well, I'm an auctioneer, John Boy. Yeah, them guys are awesome. They're great. We love auctioneers. And they're just going back. And so here they come up with the current events quiz. So they ask you about what's going on with the current events. And they give you multiple choice, A, B, or C. Now, you're a pretty damn big idiot if you don't pick C, because that's always the answer for ever since John Boy and Billy been on there. So Billy, he reads out the question, and he says, hey, Myers, he says, what's the answer? I said, John Boy and Billy. I said, you know what, I'd like to do it like this, if y'all don't mind. I'd like to answer that question how an auctioneer would answer the question. They go, oh, yeah. And they always, and, Rayford's in the back, whatever. And it's a big show. And I said, hey, how about an A today? Would it be the bomb today? No, not A. How about a B? Would it be the bomb today? I said, how about C? I said, sold, letter C. And hell, they went, and they always send you a prize package for winning the current events quiz. They sent me a foot tub full of all kinds of stuff. I eat on stuff for 3 months that they sent me, just big old boxes of stuff that, promotional stuff that they sent me anyhow. That's my story about John Boy and Billy. So the answer is, let's revisit the question. When a person has a reserve, do we sell 0 properties? Do we sell just a few properties? Do we sell a whole lot of properties when somebody has a reserve? Even though that we do not meet the reserve.
We sell a lot.
And that's letter
C.
Letter C. All right, so now that we got that straight. And this is the reason why, is because that sellers have the opportunity to change their mind. Now, we're sitting in the presence with a lady, right? So it's always been said that the lady has the right to do what? To change your mind, right?
Okay.
Do you have a right to change your mind?
Oh, yes, all the time.
Whatever. See, so
every second.
So the seller has a right to change their mind as well. So if we don't hit a specific number, let's just say that, you know what, you go into a neighborhood and you look and you see, you can pull up all the third-party sites, homes.com, Zillow, Realtor, doesn't matter. It's going to show you all of these. It's going to show you all of what values are in the neighborhoods, okay? That may not be exact science, it may not be perfect, but it's going to show you. So if you say, you know what, I don't think that property's worth $500,000, but Zillow and homes.com and realtors on their little map is saying it's worth X amount of dollars. The cool thing about what we're doing right here is, number one, the buyer can just come in an online bidding system and say, hey, I'm willing to pay X amount, even though it may be less than the reserve. So what the seller is going to do is an old country saying, so he's going to sit there and percolate on it. Now, I know you've heard it. You ever heard that term, Louie? What does percolate mean?
I don't know.
Huh?
Can you clarify?
Yeah, I'll clarify it for you. So percolate is just like the coffee pot, you know? It's over there and it's bubbling, it's percolating. All of a sudden, the whistle goes off and the coffee's ready. So the seller's going to sit here and percolate on this a little bit. They're going to cook and they're going to stew. And they're going to, most of the time, hey, everybody wants more money. Everybody wants more money. But what if you can't get more money? Then the seller can hit what we call a bid match button. They can match the bid, and when that happens, light goes green, the auctioneer is going to bring out the big gavel. First, we're going to bring out this memorandum of sale. And we're going to give this memorandum of sale, we're going to send it over to the buyer and say, hey, guess what? You are the highest bidder, but in order to be the winning bidder, because the seller is going to accept your offer, you must sign this document. It's called a memorandum of sale. The buyer signs it. Auctioneer collects the required funds, makes sure that all the documents are in place. Seller signs it. Once the funds are received, the auctioneer does what?
Hit the hammer.
Hit the hammer. Boom. Sold. That's called the bid award. So now we're going to finalize the bid award and go to closing the transaction. Title company's going to get the information. Title company's going to get the documents. We're going to firm up all the terms and conditions of sale. We're going to firm up everything that's associated with the transaction. We're going to send that over to title. We're going to get ready for closing. All right? So the moral of the story today is do not be scared. When you first started working with me, Mark, what did you think? I mean, we had just met. And you knew that I was a real estate broker and I was looking for agents, and you said, you know what? What did you tell everybody? Tell everybody what you thought. I don't want to tell everybody what you thought. It's your mind.
Well, you came up to me one day at this veterans function and said, hey, you know any real estate agents? Point them my way. I just got my broker's license here in Texas. And I said, well, I know one. Here I am. And you looked at me and said, you're a real estate agent? I said, yeah. And I signed on with you. Just kind of jumped into it. And whenever you started telling me, and we started riding around, spent a lot of time in the pickup with him. Ride here, ride there. And it's kind of like what we called on the submarine, school of the boat. He'd ask me questions, we'd be going down the road, and he'd tell a story, and it was always about learning. And a lot of it was blind faith on my part, because I thought, that's a crazy way of selling real estate. I never done this. And I thought the way a lot of real estate agents and a lot of sellers do. People ain't never going to do that. And then we started getting things sold. And I thought, he's been in the business 20 years. And that's the blind faith part, because if he didn't get stuff sold, he wouldn't be in business this long.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
And now he's been in business over 25 years, and he's still getting stuff sold.
So what is one of the most memorable sales? I don't know, it could be a circumstance, it could be good, it could be a challenge. What's one of the most memorable sales that you've ever been involved in?
Well, I guess one in Alvord. where we done real property and personal property.
Okay. So not to cut you off there, but we can do real property and personal property. Let's just talk about a real property sale. We'll talk about personal property in a minute, but let's just talk about something that just involved real property.
Okay.
And real property, for those you don't know, that's, related to real estate. Nothing with personal property. We'll talk about that in a minute, how we can do personal property.
Well, there's some real property we sold out there in Azle.
Okay.
House and 13 acres.
Okay.
And it was a kind of a warm September morning. And we went out there and we got a crowd there in front of us. And the seller's standing off to the side. And the seller was leaning on blind faith too. Well, I hope this works.
There you go.
Got this crowd, and you started the bid, and you read the crowd. That's the thing that's always impressed me, is how you can read the crowd. And you got up to a number that it was real close. And you said, let me take a break here for a second. You walked over there and talked to the seller, and after a minute you walked back, sold.
Well, that was close. I want to clarify just a couple points. But that was a great sale. First of all, we set up right on the side of the road in the entrance to there, and I remember we had the red truck and the red trailer, and people were standing all over the place. What I want to clarify is what we were talking about just before. This is the reason why I wanted to talk just about real property, because this is a perfect example. Is the seller, they had in their mind what they thought that they wanted to take for the property. They had in their mind what they thought the property was worth, but they just didn't really know. And this is what happens so many times. Even real estate agents, as good agents as they are, the market continues to shift and change. Always is shifting and changing. So how do you know exactly what it's worth? So Mark was right. I mean, I pulled out the gavel, pulled out the microphone. I went to asking people, how much will you pay? What do you think happened?
People start bidding.
People started bidding. People started bidding and telling us, well, I'll pay this, I'll pay that. And the seller's watching the whole thing. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's online or if it's live. The seller is watching everything. And the sellers was watching this day. So I got to a certain point and the bidding stopped. That's when I went over and started talking to the sellers. And we started talking about, where the money's at. Now, this is one thing we had. We had a group of people who understood what was going on in Azle, Texas. They knew what the real estate market was in Azle, Texas. We had a group of people who brought their verification of funds, and they were well qualified. And they wanted to buy real estate. So in the real estate, we have a saying, Nui: ready, willing, and able. And if you got a buyer, Mark, that's ready and willing and able, what can happen?
You can move property. You get things sold that way. You make parties happy.
And in this certain transaction, what we did not know, where was the top of the market? What was somebody willing to pay for the property? How did we find that out?
You ask them. You ask them what were they willing to pay.
And we asked them in a public forum, because remember, Mark said we had a crowd, right?
Yeah.
We had a bunch of people there. We didn't have just one or two people hanging out looking. We had a bunch of people there.
Mm-hmm.
They were parking trucks out in the pasture and lining up. Wow. We were flagging them in as the cars come in and parked, and they come down.
They were excited, ready.
You know what? That's key. They was excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
The buyers were excited. Mm-hmm. We read the terms and conditions of sale. We told everyone, hey, this is the terms and conditions of sale. Now, this is a shortened version of it. Mm-hmm. However, everybody had access to the documents, the seller's disclosures. They knew who the title company was going to be. The title company had already done the work on it. All we needed was for a group of people to say, this is what we think it's worth. Mark, what's your definition of an auction?
My definition of an auction. Well, it's a piece of property, a group of potential buyers, and a man or a person, auctioneer, standing there asking these potential buyers, what are they willing to pay for the property?
There you go.
And they in turn tell you what they're willing to pay.
So in other words, a group of people compete in a transparent atmosphere. How much more clear, and I use the word clarity all the time, if you need clarity about how much a piece of property is worth, a house, a piece of land, this just happened to be a piece of land with a couple of houses on it. Okay, they were older homes, but it's okay. If you need more clarity than that, how are you going to find it? Are you going to find it in a backdoor deal, sitting at a kitchen table?
No.
But if you're a buyer and you want to know how much it's going to cost you, do you want to make a blind offer? Or do you want to, or let me say this, do you want to bid against other blind offers is how I should put it? Or would you rather know what other people, if you had a choice, if you knew what the bids were and you wanted to make a bid, would you be in a better position if you knew what the bids were?
Yes.
Why?
I mean, so you know the direction.
You know what everybody else is doing, right?
Yeah.
So what if you didn't know? Mark, if you didn't know what the other bids were, would you be comfortable in putting in an offer if you did not know what the bids were?
That's the thing. If you're putting in a blind offer, their fear is they're paying more than what they have to. So human nature tells you to scale it back. And you put in this blind offer. And then at the end of the day, when somebody else buys it, you go, wow, I'd have been willing to pay more than that.
Okay, so this is a prime example of why clarity and transparency in the auction world works. If you knew, let's go back to 2022. In 2022, people throwing offers out, but what is the one thing that they did not know in 2022 when all of these multiple offers were happening?
What other people were paying.
If you knew, if you represented a buyer and you knew that all you had to do was make an offer $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 more than the other offer, as a real estate agent, would you advise your buyer, your client, to pay $50,000 more?
No.
Why?
Why would you pay more extra?
This is the thing that I do not get, is in the frenzy of multiple offers, real estate agents was just, hey, you need to bid more, you need to bid more, you need to bid more, you need to bid more. And now, you know what? I've seen some of this, but I heard stories. Brian was in here the other day talking, and he as a real estate agent in 2022, he had seen some offers for $100,000 more than the list price. So why would you pay $100,000 more if you knew? Now let me ask you as a consumer, Nui.
Yeah.
Okay, so assuming that you're going to buy a house, and the list price is $500,000.
Yeah.
And you could come to a online auction and see that the last bid was $450,000. What would you do if you wanted to buy a house? Would you pay $450,000, or would you bid $455,000 or $555,000? What would you do?
Just a little more than the current bid. Just as cheap as I can, You want to try to save money.
Okay.
And then
so why wouldn't you pay $555,000?
I mean, I can, but you would rather save the money and spend on something else. Maybe the house need renovation and You have to think of inspection and all that, other costs. And so just the house itself, you want, just like buying products, buying anything, you try to negotiate. You want to get the best price you can.
And if you know where the last price is,
Exactly.
now you can negotiate for just a little bit more.
A little bit more, yeah.
Mark, I mean, you and I deal with this every day, where real estate agents say, oh, well, I'm scared of this. What the heck is there to be scared about? I mean, you can see where the bids are right now. We're on Perch Drive right now. You can see where the bids are.
Yeah.
What's the bids, Nui?
$329,500.
$329,500. So somebody can come in and bid $400,000, but what if they come in and bid $335,000? They have the opportunity to do that, right? Now, if you get outbid, if somebody gets outbid, then what happens, Mark?
They have the opportunity to bid again.
Yeah.
So, if somebody comes in and bids on this system, the platform, the system, the app, whatever you want to call it, if you get outbid, you're going to get a notification. And the notification is going to say, Nui, bing, you've been outbid. Nui, you can bid again. And then you have a choice to bid again. And you have a choice. You can bid as much as you want to. You can put 10,000 in there. You can put 100,000 in there. But more than likely, what are you going to put in there, Nui?
You mean the amount?
Yeah, the amount. What are you going to put in there? If you had a choice between 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, or 100,000, what are you going to do?
You're going to do 1,000.
Woo! I'm going to tell you what, and this is what makes this real, is because you don't feel like that you're overpaying, do you? If somebody bids $330,000 and you bid $331,000, you don't feel like that you're being taken advantage of. I mean, wouldn't you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes.
Mark, I mean, listen, you've been in Texas for a long time. How many of these old school Texans would come in and pay $100,000 more knowing that they don't have to?
I don't know any of them.
There's not one of these Texans going to do it. And there's not nobody moving to Texas have to. This is the reason why this is made to be competitive. It's open, it's competitive, okay? It's transparent. Now, the seller has some rights. Let's talk about the seller's rights. In a reserve auction, the seller can say yes or no. The state of Texas gives us some guidance on that. So, Mark, you've been a real estate agent for a while. There's 4 things that is taught. I think Steve Entz, he's an attorney, and he wrote about this in the Realtor magazine, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. There's 4 things there's 4 choices that a seller has when they're presented an offer, okay? What's the number one thing? There, you say, I'm going to bring you an offer in a regular real estate way of doing business. I bring you an offer. Let's assume that you represent the buyer. Let's change it around. I represent the buyer and you represent the seller. So I'm the buyer's agent now. Like I said, we're just playing because we very rarely represent buyers, okay?
Okay.
We represent sellers. But assume this is a traditional, regular real estate transaction, and I bring you an offer, and I say, hey, present this to your seller. What's the number one thing the seller can do?
Well, they can take it.
What's the other thing that they can do?
They can refuse it.
So they can accept or they can reject. Do they have, let's just say, in your listing agreement, and it said $500,000 in your listing agreement, and the offer was $510,000. Do they have to take it?
No, they don't.
Wait a minute now. It says in the listing agreement that they have to do this.
But the state law says different.
Ooh. So that comes back to an agreement between the seller and the seller's broker. And the seller basically says, hey, if you give me $500,000, I owe you a commission, right?
That's correct.
So now that's a contractual arrangement, and we do that all the time. Say, if I can get you this amount of money, but there's nothing in the law that says you have to sell it. Now, you have an agreement that the seller at that point has to maybe pay the agent or the broker the commission, okay? But nothing in that law says that they have to sell the property. There's 2 other things that could happen. What is one of those other things?
They could totally ignore it.
They can ignore it, or they can do what?
They could come back with a counter offer.
They can make a counter offer. They don't have to do nothing or come back. So in this situation, there's one more form that I don't know. I don't know if a lot of agents may know about this, but the form basically is sent back out to everybody's involved. Let's just say that you made an offer and you didn't hear any back. Okay. Mark said that we're ignoring this, but we got to thinking about it. It's like, well, I wonder if they would pay something more. Then this form basically goes out to everybody and says, hey, is this your highest and best? Is this your highest and best? So therefore, the buyer has a chance to respond without making the counteroffer. Now, turn that around in what we do every day. The auctioneer is there to negotiate. So I'm saying, hey, we have this offer. I got $330,000 who will pay $400,000. Nobody says anything. Hey, will anybody pay $335,000? Yeah, somebody $335, $340, $345, $350. It's called counter bidding in our world. It's not a counter offer, but that's a counter bid, because the seller says they want more money, and the seller has the right to refuse these other offers. The seller has the liberty of bidding. In other words, the seller can say, and this is where the counteroffer comes in. It's like, okay, wait a minute. You know, those bids are a little low. He's asking the auctioneer, or he's hired the auctioneer to ask everybody, remember the form? The form goes out from the state of Texas. It's a promulgated form, and it says, hey, is this your highest and best? And that can happen in the traditional real estate world. All the auctioneer is doing is coming in and saying, hey, I got that $330,000. We're not going to take that just yet. Will you pay $340,000, $350,000, $360,000, $370,000? And if we haven't met that reserve, then the seller can sit there and think about it. But a lot of times, what happens, Mark?
A lot of times the seller says, you know what? I want the money.
I want the money. Show me the greenbacks. And so this is why we encourage everyone to come in and pay attention to not only online bidding, come out and take a chance at a live auction. We may allow online bidding. We call that simulcast. A lot of times we sit here in the office and we sell webcasts. That means we're just going to do a live webcast. We're going to do a live stream. We're going to do this. That's okay, and that's cool. And everybody have a chance to bid. What I want to leave everybody with today is do not be scared to get involved. You remember the first auction you come to, Noe? And I remember that you were standing over by the door just observing, but what did you observe at your first live auction that you ever come to?
Oh, it was the first auction ever in my life, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was exciting. I see that a lot of people were like excited and they want to participate in the bidding war. People were just like raising their hands all the time, and then you were great as an auctioneer to like welcome them and let them bid, and you disclose everything, all the information, document the terms and conditions and buyer's premium, everything was announced before the bidding.
Right.
And so yeah, I just learned the process. And even though at the end it wasn't sold, but you see where the current money at, where people are willing to pay right now. So yeah.
So let's talk about this, and we do this. We call this simulcast. Okay. So I'm looking for the buyer that's standing there. Okay. I want that buyer to do this, but sometimes the stars and the moon doesn't align. So what we do is we come back. Now, we did allow everybody to continue to bid online, because these are a couple things I want to have happen. Let's just say somebody walks in the door and they're late and they didn't see the terms and conditions of sale, but they really want to put a bid in on the house. Okay. So we don't stop. We continue the bid just in case somebody wants to take another look. Or, and I found this quite interesting. I was reading something this morning. We're dealing with something that has a HUD document. And this is a HUD, Housing and Urban Development Regulation dealing with auctions and what some of the requirements to deal with the HUD. And it says, now I said a while ago, this is the bid award at the fall of the hammer, okay? Even though that we have some of the documents, or we may have a high bidder, and just like you're saying, okay, we had a high bidder, but we didn't have what, Mark? We didn't have confirmation from the seller, did we?
That's correct.
We didn't have confirmation with the seller, all right? So until we have that confirmation, the bid is still open. And this is what I found interesting about that document. It says, this HUD, for people who don't know, Housing and Urban Development, this is, they have subsidized programs like VA and FHA and some other programs out there. It says that you got to have a buyer ready to go. And even though that you got a buyer ready to go, you must leave the bidding open until you have full confirmation. And it makes sense because that's what we do all day long. And just because the auctioneer is standing there, they don't have full confirmation from the seller, be it the lender, the homeowner, or all the parties above, it may be illegitimate for the auctioneer to say sold. So in this case, and you are correct, you observed this right down to the T. I did not say sold. I said, hey, everybody come back and take a second look, because it brings back to a question I asked Mark a while ago. What is my job? When I work for the seller, what is my job, Mark?
When you work for the seller, it's to get the best price possible.
That's it in a nutshell. Under the terms and conditions of sale. To get the best price possible. So when I'm talking with the seller, someone else in a public and open forum may come online and say, hey, I'll pay another $5,000. So Mark, what if we're selling a house and we call it street value? Well, if the presumed street value is $600,000. Now, street value to me, that might be an appraisal, that might be a previous listing. The neighbor down the street might think it's worth $600,000. 2 or 3 people who drive by with cars looking on the apparatuses that are out there, Zillow, Realtor, Homes.com, they're looking at this. The perceived value from, on all these apps may be 600 or 610 or 620. It might be $599. But what happens if the bid is only, let's just say $400,000? Now you add your buyer's premium in there, and if it's a 13% buyer premium, you just heard Newey say, I announced a buyer's premium. Let's just assume it's a 13% buyer premium. That brings the total money that you're out of pocket to $452,000. Now you're a real estate agent. You're representing a buyer. And you know, or you think that the street value is $600,000. But the bid's only $400,000 plus the buyer's premium equal $452,000. Why wouldn't you advise your client as a buyer to bid $410,000 or $420,000? Why wouldn't you do that?
I would, because as a real estate agent, that's your job, is to advise. Give your client as much knowledge as possible.
But this is an auction, and there's a buyer's premium, and you have them to buy the property as is.
Well, the buyers walked through the house and done their inspection.
Okay, so let's say that. Let's go to the money. Okay, they said, well, that's another $10,000 plus, the auctioneer's fee. The auctioneer's fee, we got to pay this auctioneer's fee. So even at another $10,000, that's only another $1,300, right, in auctioneer's fee. So let's do some quick cowboy math. Now you're up to $463,300. Where's the street value at?
Right.
Well, what if the street value was at $600,000? Well, let's just say it was at 500,000. I mean, okay, good point. Let's just say it was 500,000, but your total money out is $363,000. Looks like the auction process just saved somebody somewhere around $37,700.
Yeah.
Now, as a real estate agent, if you could save your buyer 37 grand in a transaction, what would you advise them to do if they wanted the property?
I would advise them to take it.
There you go. So in a nutshell, this works on both sides because the seller has seen where the true market value is. The buyer is not overpaying. In some people's mind, oh, well, they're underpaying. Well, why didn't, if you think they're underpaying, come in and bid another $10,000. And I've had realtors do this. Oh, no, that property's worth more money. Well, Miss Realtor, you have the opportunity today to make your offer. If you want to make the balance, if you think it's worth $500,000, just go ahead and make a bid. Now you can make, no, we won't do that. Now it's not a good investment for it. Well, if it's not a good investment for you, maybe it's a good investment for someone else. Or maybe this is where we're at. The marketplace has spoke. The market has spoke. And the auctioneer, okay, we just watched the video on it this morning. This happened right here at this desk the other day where we done a live webcast. And the bid was $670,000. What was I asking for, Nui? You remember what I was asking for? We started up here and somebody said, hey, won't you ask for $3,000 more? You remember that? What was I doing?
You asked a little more, right?
I did ask a little more. How much more did I ask for?
It was 670.
I had 670.
You just asked 671.
And I started asking 671, and what happened?
And no one was willing to bid anymore.
Nobody was willing to bid anymore. So we sold the property. We confirmed it right here on the phone, sitting right here. We confirmed it, and they said, sell the property. Mm-hmm. Now, street value on that one was over $900,000.
Yeah.
And we sold it for $670 plus the buyer's premium, which brought it up to a shade over $700,000. Mm-hmm. But the point of this right here is if the street value is almost $1 million, why wouldn't you advise your buyer to get in on that action?
And the thing about the auction process and regular listing, if it was listed at $950,000, you would never have gotten any of these offers at $670,000 or anything like that, and listing would sit there.
So, you know what? We're going to wrap this up. We got to go meet another appointment, but we're going to wrap this up. So we got about 5 to 7 minutes, and this is a great topic to talk about, Mark. How many listings do you see every day that is just sitting there?
There's a stack of them.
Thousands.
You can search MLS and just put in days on market over this much, and it'll bring the whole list.
So part of our program is designed to reach out to realtors and say, hey, you got a property that's just sitting there. It's been sitting there for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. You got to practice your auction, right?
Okay.
What's the next bid?
70.
I'm at 70 days.
What were you saying?
Oh, yeah, me and you going to practice in the truck. You're on restriction now. So you're on the market for all of these days. Why wouldn't you speed that up? Now, this is how we do it. So we got about 5 minutes, so we're gonna get to the shortcut of this thing. There's one thing in the whole entire world of real estate, in my opinion, that creates attention to make real estate sell. What is that? What would you think that is? Just one guess, real quick. What is one thing that makes real estate sell? People react.
One thing that makes real estate sell?
Yeah. What is one thing that makes people react to real estate?
Price.
Mark, what's your...
The lure of the deal?
What else? What's the number one thing?
Well, the chance of making a deal, making money.
Price, the allure of the deal, getting a good deal. Okay? Price, the allure of the deal, getting a good deal. These two combinations right here makes people react. So auctioneers use what we refer to as starting bids. Why do we use starting bids? Because I do not know how much the buyer is willing to pay. Now, out there in the auction, let's talk about the real estate industry first. You have a listing price. And what you said, Mark, is that listing price, it sits there and sits there and sits there, and we see small denominational or incremental decreases, hoping that somebody will say, hey, it was listed at $950 and now it's listed at $945,000. Let me just jump on it. It don't happen like that, does it?
No.
What happens when the auctioneer comes in and says, hey, you know what? Who will pay $100,000 for the property?
Everybody raise their hand.
Everybody raises their hand. Now, not everybody can afford to pay the $950. Everybody wants to pay the $100,000. So now what we do is we create an auction atmosphere. And the auctioneer does what?
He starts asking for more.
I start asking for more until we find out what the maximum is someone wants to pay. In the auction world, we have minimum bids, we have starting bids, we have opening bids, we have reserves, okay? All of these come into play. All right, some of my good friends out there in the auction world, all they use is minimum bids, okay? And that's cool. But sometimes in some markets, it doesn't work as well as in other markets. I mean, when you go to places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, they've been doing auctions up there for, 200 years. It's a great, great process. Over here in Texas and some other places that I've been, minimum bids doesn't work as well. Absolute auctions doesn't work as well. So what we do is, number one, we condition the sellers to say, hey, you know what? We're going to find out what the property's really worth. And we're asking the buyers, what are you willing to pay? And the buyers have a chance to come to the live auction, bring their wherewithal, we call it wherewithal, what they're willing to pay, how much how much cash do they have or whatever, or they can go online and make the bids. We got 2 minutes. We're going to end this. In 2 minutes, Mark, what have you seen people do when we started the bids out at a lower number?
People get excited and they start raising their hand. They'll jump in there and they say, you know what, I can afford $100,000. And watching you talk to these people, like you said, it's Texas. There's not so many auctions. And you go up into Ohio and Pennsylvania, you have a very knowledgeable group of buyers sitting out there at the auction. But in Texas, I've seen you go over details with the crowd. There's no reason for them to be scared. And after you explain things to them, I've seen them get excited and they start raising their hand to buy.
Because they were a little bit more educated.
That's right.
We live in a metropolis over here. They call it the DFW. If anybody's listening to this and you don't know anything about the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, let me tell you what. There's people from here in the world from everywhere. Okay? Nui said this a while ago. You'd never been to an auction, right? Did you even know what an auction was before you met me?
No.
And you know what? Nui is not alone. But you found out about the auctions. What do you think about this process after you've seen it a few times?
I think it's pretty cool that it's like when you go shopping, you kind of want to negotiate for the best price. And this is pretty much the same thing. You try to save more, you get the best price, you get what you're willing to pay, that you're happy to purchase it. It doesn't matter if it's a real property, it's a personal property. Mm-hmm. At auction, you can, whatever you want is out there. You bid on it, you raise your hand, you bid of what you want.
So let's just say that you're going to go to a store and you're going to buy a pair of shoes, okay? And you see two stores.
Yeah.
And one of them says 70% off. Mm-hmm. Which store are you going to go into?
Of course, with the sale on.
Okay, you're going to go to where the sale is. Now, you get in there and you're unsure about the price. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do next?
Unsure about the price, you ask.
I mean, you know what? Why can't real estate be the same thing? Yeah. Real estate, there's more question, but remember, we have the terms and conditions of sale. We have all the disclosures. We have everything that we possibly can put out there in advance. That way that people know what it is. So if you know that you can put your offer in, do you feel more comfortable at buying at a certain price?
Of course. I mean, you want to make sure before you spend the money, you want to know what exactly you're paying for. That there's no hidden or there's no other fee or, that it's really like on discount or like if something is too cheap, it looks too cheap, or the street value or what you expect it to be, that it's not what you see, then you just go ahead and ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. You're not losing anything. You're just learning more.
So to wrap this up, Mark, and thank you for that, Nui, because I think that explanation right there is going to help a tremendous amount of people. Because, a few months ago, Nui didn't know anything about real estate auctions. Okay, she knew zero about real estate auctions. There's a lot of people in the Metroplex that understands zero. I get asked all the time, hey, what is an auction? I get asked by real estate agents. Even though that there's a whole section from the National Association of Realtors that talks about real estate auctions, it's in the Code of Conduct. It's mentioned in the Code of Conduct. If you don't know about a real estate auction, it's a real estate agent's duty to find out so they can represent their customer. It's also the real estate agent's duty to give, let's just say that they're an unrepresented buyer. It is a real estate agent's broker's duty to give that consumer information even though it is not beneficial to the agent. In other words, Mark, you're not fixing to make a dime off of this, but if you see somebody on the street and they say, Mark, what about an auction? Do you believe in an auction or you don't believe in an auction? What is your duty?
My duty is to educate them on any knowledge that I can and
But
help them.
You're not getting paid for this knowledge.
Well, as a license holder, that is my obligation.
That's exactly right. It's your obligation. So this is, we get realtors, we're in encounter with realtors all the time that says, oh, you don't have a chance to buy that house. Oh, don't go down there to the auction because you know what, you're never going to buy it this cheap. They're not, in some cases, giving out good information. Now, we work with a lot of real estate agents. It's like, hey, how do I sign up? How do I get my buyer more information? We answer lots of questions every day about that. But if you're just a consumer and you're watching this and you've never, ever been to an auction, there's a group inside of the National Association of Realtors. And this group deals primarily with international properties. The group is called a Certified International Property Specialist. So I've attended a great number of those classes. And what they're doing in the CIPS is they're teaching traditional ways of doing things, but introducing new ways of doing things in different cultures. Feng shui is a big word. In other words, some people deliver their business card in this fashion. And it's respectful. Some individuals won't buy a house unless it's facing east. Some people will not buy a house if there's a red door on it. So in the Certified International Property Specialist, this is being taught about how to deal in the international community. We're in this international community. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and we're going to close this out, is that personally, now I've been to that class and I've taken a number of them classes, and it's great. It's great knowledge. Personally, I have sold real estate for Vietnamese Buddhist monks. Okay? That was a great experience. I have sold real estate to an individual from Cambodia, South Africa, Australia, Central America, because these individuals come to my auction, and even though that they did not know a lot about it, they took the opportunity to learn more about it. They took the opportunity to ask questions. And there's some individuals that made some really, really good deals because they were there and they were doing the right things. So, well, we are off to the races. We're out the door. We're gonna. What do we got to do this afternoon, Nui?
We're meeting a lady. She's an agent, and she wants our help. So we're going to look at the house.
We're gonna go look at the house. But we got a webcast coming up at 1 o'clock, so we're going to have to do that on the run. We're going to operate this one right out of the truck seat. This is as easy as it is. So this is what I want to leave everybody with. If you're a real estate agent out there and you have a listing, you know what? Call and ask some questions. It doesn't cost any money to call and talk to us. Find out about what the rules of engagement are about dealing with auctioneers. Call Mark right here. Mark, what's your telephone number? What's your telephone number, Mark?
817-528-1535.
Now, you've heard Mark talk about some of his experiences. I want you to get a hold of Mark, talk to Mark on an individual basis and say, hey, you know what? I got a piece of real estate and I just want to find out a little bit more. That's where it all starts. And we're going to do our best to get you tuned up. Until then, we got to get out of here, guys. Let's go.
I'm the auctioneer, people like it that way.